My name is Sarah, and this is my story. It's not an easy one to tell, but I hope by sharing it, I can help someone out there feel less alone. I'm sitting here in my small apartment, the one I moved into after everything fell apart, with a cup of coffee that's gone cold and a heart that's still trying to piece itself back together. The rain taps against my window, and it feels like the right kind of day to start talking about the hardest thing I've ever done, cheating on my husband, David. Let's go back to the beginning, to when life felt like a dream I never wanted to wake up from. I was 22 when I met David. I was working as a barista in a little coffee shop in our hometown, a small place in Ohio where everyone knew everyone. I wasn't looking for love. I was just trying to save enough money to finish my degree in nursing. My life was simple: work, study, repeat. But then David walked in one Tuesday morning, ordered a black coffee, and smiled at me like I was the only person in the room. He was older than me, 28, with kind brown eyes and a laugh that made my stomach flip. He was a high school history teacher, the kind who made kids excited about the past. He'd come in every morning after that, always ordering the same thing, always finding a way to make me laugh. One day, he left a note on his napkin with his number and the words, "I'd love to take you out for coffee somewhere else." I still have that napkin, tucked away in a box I can't bring myself to open. Our first date was at a diner across town. I was nervous, my hands shaking as I stirred sugar into my coffee. David was calm, steady, asking me about my dreams, my family, my life. He listened like he really cared, and by the end of the night, I knew I was falling for him. We dated for 2 years, and every moment felt like a gift. He'd leave little notes in my textbooks, surprise me with flowers, and hold my hand like he'd never let go. When he proposed under a big oak tree in the park, I said yes before he even finished asking. We got married in a small church, surrounded by family and friends. I wore a simple white dress, and David cried when he saw me walk down the aisle. That day I believed we'd be together forever. I believed love was enough to carry us through anything. Our first few years were beautiful. We bought a little house with a porch swing, the kind I'd always dreamed of. I finished nursing school, and David was my biggest cheerleader. He'd cook dinner when I came home exhausted from clinicals, and we'd spend evenings dreaming about our future. Kids, vacations, growing old together. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and I loved it. But slowly, things started to change. It wasn't one big moment. It was 1,000 little ones. David got busier at work, staying late to grade papers or coach the debate team. I was working long shifts at the hospital, sometimes 12 hours, sometimes more. We'd come home tired, eat in silence, and fall into bed without talking. The notes stopped. The flowers stopped. The spark we had started to flicker. I didn't notice it at first. I was too caught up in my own world. Patience, paperwork, trying to keep up. But one night, I looked at David across the dinner table, and he felt like a stranger. He was still kind, still steady, but the man who used to make my heart race was gone. Or maybe I was the one who'd changed. That's when I met Ethan. He was a doctor at the hospital, charming and confident, with a smile that could light up a room. He was new, just transferred from a hospital in Chicago, and everyone noticed him. He'd stop by the nurse's station, make jokes, and ask about our days. He made me feel seen again, like I wasn't just a tired nurse or a wife who'd forgotten how to laugh. It started innocently, a conversation in the break room, a shared laugh over a bad cafeteria lunch. But then it was texts after work, quick coffee breaks together, moments that felt like they belonged to someone else's life. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I loved David. But deep down, I knew I was crossing a line. One night, Ethan asked me to grab a drink after a late shift. I should have said no. I should have gone home to David, who was probably waiting with a plate of leftovers and a tired smile. But I said yes. And that night in a dimly lit bar, I let Ethan kiss me. It was quick, a moment of weakness, but it felt like the world shifted under my feet. I went home that night and cried in the shower, promising myself it would never happen again. But it did. Over the next few months, I fell deeper into something I couldn't control. Ethan was like a drug. Exciting, dangerous, making me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. We'd meet in secret, stealing moments in empty hospital rooms or quiet corners of the city. Every time I told myself it was the last time. Every time I lied. I was living two lives. The one with David, where I pretended everything was fine, and the one with Ethan, where I felt like I was 22 again. But the guilt was eating me alive. I'd look at David sleeping next to me and feel like a monster. I'd see Ethan at work and feel my heart race, then hate myself for it. I was trapped, and I didn't know how to get out. The guilt was a weight I carried everywhere. It was in the way I avoided David's eyes when he asked how my day was. It was in the lies I told about late shifts or meetings that didn't exist. It was in the way I'd check my phone, hoping for a text from Ethan, then delete it before David could see. I wasn't just cheating on my husband. I was cheating on the person I thought I was. David started to notice something was wrong. He'd ask if I was okay, if work was too much, if he'd done something to upset me. I'd brush it off, say I was just tired, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. He was trying so hard to reach me, but I was too far gone. I was drowning in my own choices, and I didn't know how to ask for help. One night, everything changed. It was a Friday, and I'd told David I was working late. Instead, I was with Ethan at a hotel across town. We'd been careful, or so I thought. But that night, I let my guard down. I didn't hear my phone buzzing with David's calls. I didn't see the text from my friend Emily, a nurse who worked with me, warning me that David had stopped by the hospital looking for me. When I got home at 2 a.m., David was sitting in the living room, the lights off except for a single lamp. He looked at me, and his eyes were different, hard, broken, like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. "Where were you, Sarah?" he asked, his voice quiet but sharp. I froze. My mind raced for a lie, but nothing came. "I was at work," I said, but my voice shook. He held up his phone. Emily called. "She said you left the hospital at 6. It's 2 a.m. "Sarah, where were you?" I couldn't look at him. My heart was pounding and my mouth was dry. I wanted to run, to disappear, but I was trapped. I was with a friend," I stammered. "A friend?" He repeated the word like it was poison. "Who?" I couldn't say Ethan's name. I couldn't say anything. The silence was louder than any words I could have spoken. David stood up, his hands shaking. "Sarah, tell me the truth. Are you having an affair?" The word hit me like a punch. Affair. It sounded so ugly, so final. I wanted to deny it, to make it go away. But the truth was clawing its way out. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry, David." He didn't yell. He didn't throw things. He just looked at me, his face crumpling like a piece of paper. "Why?" he whispered. Why wasn't I enough? I didn't have an answer. I didn't know why I'd done it, not really. All I could do was cry and say, "I'm sorry," over and over, like it could fix anything. David walked out of the room and I heard the front door slam. He didn't come home that night. The next few days were a blur. David stayed with his brother, and I was alone in our house, surrounded by memories of the life we'd built. I called in sick to work, too ashamed to face Ethan or anyone else. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just sat on the couch, staring at the walls, replaying every mistake I'd made. When David came back, he looked like he hadn't slept either. We sat down and talked, or tried to. I told him everything. About Ethan, about how it started, about the guilt that had been tearing me apart. I begged for his forgiveness, but he just shook his head. "I don't know if I can do this, Sarah," he said. "I don't know if I can look at you and not see him." He moved out that week. I helped him pack his things, each box feeling like another piece of my heart breaking. When he drove away, I stood on the porch, watching his car disappear, and I realized I'd lost the best thing I'd ever had. The weeks after David left were the darkest of my life. I moved out of our house and into a small apartment. unable to bear the memories in every corner. I quit my job at the hospital, too. I couldn't face Ethan, couldn't face the place where I'd betrayed my husband. I found a new job at a clinic across town, but it didn't fill the hole inside me. I stopped talking to Ethan. He tried to reach out, but I blocked his number. Whatever I'd felt for him was gone, replaced by shame and regret. I realized I hadn't loved him, not really. I'd loved the way he made me feel, like I was someone new, someone free. But that wasn't real. It was a fantasy, and I'd destroyed my marriage for it. I tried to rebuild my life, but it was hard. Friends took sides, and most chose David. I didn't blame them. My parents were supportive, but I could see the disappointment in their eyes. I went to therapy, trying to understand why I'd done it, why I'd thrown away everything for a moment of excitement. My therapist, Dr. Carter, was kind but firm. She made me face the hard truths. I'd been unhappy, not just with David, but with myself. I'd felt stuck, like my life was slipping away, and I'd run to Ethan instead of facing it. I missed David every day. I'd see things that reminded me of him. A history book in a store, a song we used to dance to, and it would hit me like a wave. I wrote him letters I never sent, pouring out my heart, apologizing, begging for another chance. But I knew he deserved better than me. One day, I ran into Emily at the grocery store. She was one of the few friends who still talked to me, though things were strained. She told me David was struggling too. He'd taken a leave from teaching, was staying with his brother, trying to figure out what to do next. "He still loves you, Sarah," she said. "But he's so hurt. He doesn't know how to trust again." Her words gave me hope, but they also broke me. I wanted to fix things, but I didn't know how. I started going to church again, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. I wasn't sure I believed in anything anymore, but sitting in the pews, listening to the hymns, gave me a small sense of peace. I prayed for forgiveness, not just from God, but from David, from myself. Months passed, and I started to find a new rhythm. I threw myself into work, took up yoga, started journaling. I was trying to become someone I could be proud of again, but the loneliness was always there, a quiet ache that never went away. Then one day, I got a call from David. My heart stopped when I saw his name on my phone. He sounded tired but calm. "Can we talk?" he asked. I said yes, my hands shaking as I hung up. We met at a park, the same one where he'd proposed. He looked thinner, his eyes tired, but he was still David, still the man I loved. We walked for a while, not saying much, just letting the silence settle between us. Finally, he stopped and looked at me. "I've been thinking a lot," he said. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Sarah, but I miss you. I miss us." I started crying, and so did he. We talked for hours, about everything, the good times, the bad, the mistakes we'd both made. He admitted he'd been distant too focused on work, not seeing how much I was struggling. It wasn't an excuse for what I did, but it was a start. David and I didn't get back together right away. It wasn't like the movies, where one conversation fixes everything. But we started talking more, meeting for coffee, trying to rebuild something. It was slow, painful, full of awkward moments and old hurts. Trust is hard to rebuild once it's broken, and I had to earn every bit of it. We went to couples therapy, something neither of us had ever done. Our therapist, Dr. Ellis, was tough but fair. She made us face the hard stuff. My betrayal, David's anger, the ways we'd both let our marriage slip. I had to own what I'd done, not just to David, but to myself. I had to stop making excuses and start being honest. There were days when I thought we wouldn't make it. David would get quiet, and I'd know he was thinking about Ethan. I'd see the pain in his eyes, and it would kill me all over again. But there were good days too. Days when we'd laugh like we used to. Days when I'd catch him looking at me like he still loved me. I worked hard to change. I kept going to therapy, kept journaling, kept praying. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping women who were starting over, just like me. It gave me purpose, a way to give back after all the hurt I'd caused. I wanted to be someone David could trust again, someone I could trust again. One night, about a year after we started talking again, David asked me to move back in. It wasn't a grand gesture, no flowers or big speeches. He just looked at me over dinner and said, "I think I'm ready, Sarah. I want to try." I cried so hard I could barely speak, but I said yes. Moving back in was strange. Our house felt different, like we were both guests in someone else's life. But we worked at it. We made new routines, date nights, morning walks, little moments to remind us why we fell in love. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Ethan was gone from my life, but his shadow lingered. David would sometimes ask about him, not out of anger, but because he needed to know. I answered every question, no matter how much it hurt. I owed him that. Over time, the questions got fewer, the silences less heavy. We were healing, slowly but surely. Today, David and I are still together. It's been 3 years since that night in the living room, when everything fell apart. We're not the same people we were before. I don't think we ever will be. But in some ways, we're stronger. We've learned to talk, to listen, to be honest even when it's hard. We've learned that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice, one we make every day. I still carry the guilt, and I probably always will. But I've learned to forgive myself, not because I deserve it, but because I can't move forward if I'm stuck in the past. David has forgiven me too, though I know it wasn't easy. He's the strongest person I know, and I'm grateful every day that he gave me another chance. Our life now is quieter, but it's ours. We're talking about starting a family, something we'd put off before. We're saving for a trip to Italy, a dream we had when we first got married. We're building something new, piece by piece, and it feels like a miracle. I think about the woman I was back then, the one who made those choices, and she feels like a stranger. I don't hate her anymore, but I don't want to be her again. I've learned that happiness isn't something you chase. It's something you build, with honesty, with effort, with love. If you're watching this, maybe you're going through something similar. Maybe you've made mistakes or you're thinking about making them. My advice is this: be honest with yourself. If you're unhappy, if you're lost, don't run from it. Face it. Talk to the people you love. Get help if you need it. And if you've hurt someone, own it. Apologize, not just with words, but with actions. It's hard and it's painful, but it's the only way to heal. You are not your mistakes. You are not defined by the worst thing you've done. You can change, you can grow, you can make things right. It won't be easy, but it's worth it. Trust me, I've been there. If this story touched you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to my channel for more stories about life, love, and starting over. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your struggles, your victories. Let's keep this conversation going, because no one should feel alone. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.